Korean Gen Z. Maybe You're the Oldie? By Isu Choi and David Tizard. Have you ever spotted your coworker working with their earbuds on in the office and thought it impolite? Or ever thought your youngest coworker was rude because they weren't quick enough to help serve food and drinks at a company dinner? Such incidents have become something of an issue recently in Korean society, exacerbated by their appearance on the popular Saturday Night Live skit, MZ Office. And much of the discussion revolves around generational attitudes and the idea of a gonde. Linguistically, a gonde is a person who always thinks their ideas are right and makes frequent appeals to age or authority to belittle or demean others. While Western variations such as boomer or Karen are far more recent inventions, gonde has a far longer history, officially being first recorded as early as 1961. Thus, gonde carries with it the story of Korea's continual generational divide. Generational divide. Young people will often use the term gonde to refer to older people whom they dislike, though of course rarely in their presence. In turn, older people use terms such as MZ, born 1981 to 2012, and Z Alpha, born 1996 to 2023, to refer to younger people. These are not just descriptive terms denoting age, but instead can carry with them a certain collection of assumptions and prejudices. This gives rise to age-based segregation in society. For young people, in particular, there is a lot of ill feeling about this, not due to the divisive aspect itself, but because MZs are all lumped together under one category. What, for example, does a 40-year-old have in common with a teenager? Other neologisms express the evolving dynamics between generations. From terms like latte is horse, which humorously mocks the conversational habits of older generations, to jomgon, a young gonde, and gonmo, these words subtly highlight the ongoing conflicts between different age groups. Unfortunately, this increasing generational divide has a negative impact on society as a whole. Many attribute these generational conflicts to the rapid development of science. For example, the millennials were born when PCs first arrived. Zs were born as personalized content became the trend. Therefore, such conflicts are assumed to be a natural response to the quickly changing social and technological environment. However, intra-generational conflicts are also lurking in the dark corners. And if we take a closer look at average Z's way of life, it becomes somewhat confusing as to who the real Gagondes actually are. Generation Z. Generation Z is the demographic cohort that follows the millennials and precedes Generation Alpha. While there is no universally agreed upon start and end date for this generation, it is generally considered to include individuals born roughly between the mid-1990s to the mid-2000s. Korean Gen Zers have been shaped by unique cultural, social, and economic factors that distinguish them from other generations in the country. Here are some key characteristics and trends associated with Generation Z in Korea, as seen and observed by a Gen Zer who has lived in the country her entire life. As with any generational categorization, there will always be variations in attitudes, beliefs, and behavior among its members, so it's important to note that these characteristics are general trends and may not apply to every individual within Generation Z. How Zs view each other. Personality types. Korean Gen Zers often tend to categorize people based on specific personality traits, commonly using the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, MBTI, as a framework. This gained momentum in 2020 and has since become a standard way for individuals to introduce themselves. I was surprised when I first entered university and noticed that nearly all my fellow students identified themselves with MBTI type. It became a fun daily ritual to ask each other, "Are you a T?" Notably, this trend has extended beyond casual conversations. Marketing strategies now recommend products based on MBTI types, while content and communities cater to specific MBTI groups. However, a human is not a robot governed by fixed traits. Our minds, emotions, and physical state are highly intricate and constantly evolving. As a result, personality traits are also subject to change due to these dynamic factors. Embracing a view that compartmentalizes individuals into specific criteria and assumes everyone can be neatly categorized can inadvertently foster the belief that each person possesses a rigid, unchanging personality. This mindset often leads to the tendency of individuals to perceive others as either my type or different types, reinforcing the inclination to adhere strictly to a single personality label. This rigid approach bears resemblance to the attitude of a Gonde. Surprisingly, despite the prevalence of MBTI usage among Generation Z, approximately 97% of the students I've spoken to at universities seem to overlook the underlying problem of how this framework impacts the way they perceive and interact with one another. How Zs view communication. SNS. Gen Zers are known for their mobile-centric lifestyle and online communities. Thus, they have a particularly high demand for SNS platforms. In 2021, Korea boasted the world's second-largest SNS usage rate, with Gen Zers among the heaviest users. The research also revealed that the average phone usage time in Korea exceeds 5 hours, indicating that online communication might now even surpass offline interactions. However, the pervasive influence of these sophisticated SNS platforms has led to a concerning trend where individuals feel compelled to maintain a specific persona. This pressure arises from the platform's emphasis on users sharing carefully curated and attractive images of themselves. Regrettably, this struggle to uphold a certain persona also reflects a Gonde attitude, akin to stubbornly clinging to a single perspective. According to Carl Jung's Map of the Soul, individuals who consistently display a particular persona without allowing themselves to explore and embrace their hidden aspects may eventually experience sudden emotional breakdowns. The lack of time spent discovering and accepting all facets of their personality contributes to this vulnerability. Thus, as SNS platforms continue to dominate our waking lives, some Gen Zers may find it challenging to learn how to embrace the entirety of their being. The impact of this issue is evident even in the K-pop industry, where many idols hint at the challenges of maintaining a curated image. BTS's Map of the Soul album series and G-Idol's song Queen Card, for example. How Z view education, a tool for individualism. Education serves as the primary means to pursue individualism. This individualism is often characterized by a strong desire to attend prestigious academic institutions and driven by personal satisfaction. Notably, Korea's social structure places immense emphasis on entrance exams and scholastic achievements, with recent government debates reflecting concerns over the escalating rates of private education and killer questions in our national exams. The number of university entrance exam retakers has significantly increased. In 2022, a record high of 30% of examinees were retakers, the highest rate since 1997. Gen Z also places a strong emphasis on private education over public education. So, if a curriculum doesn't align with a typical Zer's personal goals, they often tend to disregard the class, and some may not hesitate to show their disinterest openly, regardless of their relationship with the teacher. In essence, there is a concerning neglect of education. We don't embrace or encourage critical thinking or problem solving within our society. This neglect is not limited to conventional schools, but has also crept into alternative educational settings, where essential skills like communication and cooperation are increasingly overlooked. The same trend is evident in Korean universities, where the focus often leans towards preparing for entrance exams or acquiring fragmented technological knowledge. Regrettably, rather than actively seeking education geared towards preparing them for the challenges of the global society, the prevailing attitude of students aligns with the goals set by the majority of universities. If this trend persists, Korea risks becoming a nation consumed by a Gonde mentality, ill-prepared to communicate and engage effectively with other nations on the global stage. Urgent measures are needed to steer education back on track towards cultivating holistic skills and preparing the next generation to thrive in an interconnected world. How Z view careers. Early resignation. The newly coined term Wola Bell symbolizes the desire for a balance between Gen Zers' personal work and private life. This emphasis on individualism is evident in the soaring rates of MZs leaving their jobs early. In 2021, a staggering 65.6% chose to do so. Remarkably, 60% of MZs view this ratio favorably, reflecting their commitment to prioritizing personal fulfillment over traditional notions of career longevity. Rigid organizational cultures and a lack of career growth, as well as frequent overtime work and the pressure they faced from their organizations regarding the use of holiday opportunities, contributed to their decisions to leave their jobs prematurely. The older generation becomes a gonde when they refuse to listen with an open mind. However, before blindly agreeing with MZ's criticisms of the older generation, let's look at it this way. It is likely the older generation sticks to their opinions not because of mere negative emotions, but because they deem it the right answer based on their own database. In fact, it is true that they have stayed longer in the business to see the whole picture. They have stuck to their conservative and collective way of thinking, just like the younger generation stuck to their open and individual way of thinking. Instead of trying to understand the reasons behind why the older generation think and act the way they do, haven't MZs just responded in the same manner by resigning immediately and not working towards a permanent solution? In the end, this is the same attitude as the older generation cutting off communication because they think they have the answers. They are different behaviors driven by the same underlying motivation. How Z view romance. Alternative romance. Korean Zers are very busy. Thus, the term godsang has emerged. This refers to someone whose life sees them excelling in various fields like academics, work, leisure, hobbies, and fitness. Essentially, the God life. This is something many Zers admire. That's why we often find romance to be an elusive luxury in our busy lives. We simply don't have the time for it. This societal shift is evident in the declining marriage rates and the evolving preferences of entertainment content, which highlights the emerging priorities of our generation. Last year saw the lowest number of marriages on record. At the same time, popular K-pop groups like aespa, LE SSERAFIM, and G-IDOL have increasingly begun to explore topics and concepts beyond love. A particularly intriguing alternative solution for romance that has emerged is an immersion into hyper-realism. The popularity of reality love-based programs like Exchange, Singles Inferno, and Love Catcher are on the rise and spreading rapidly. When questioned about their fascination with these reality shows, most Gen Z interviewees said that they watch them for vicarious joy, teri manjok, and find the heightened drama to be more realistic. At the same time, a 2022 survey revealed that 65% of young people aged 19 to 34 claim to be not dating, with 70% actively choosing a non-romantic lifestyle. Here, we see a manifestation of Jean Baudrillard's 1981 idea of simulacra and simulation. The imaginary is now more relatable than reality. We have entered the world of the hyper-real. The second alternative solution for romance is known as nangman, a term that translates to romance in English but carries a unique connotation. In the Korean context, it refers to an attitude or psychology characterized by emotional and idealistic responses, detached from the constraints of reality. For Gen Zers, nangman entails seeking out personalized content and engaging in hobbies that resonate with their emotions, regardless of how others perceive them. Nangman also has its drawbacks, however. While searching for their nangman, there is a risk that Generation Z may become overly focused on their own preferences, neglecting the importance of understanding and respecting others' perspectives on love. This tendency could again lead to a higher likelihood of Gen Z developing gonde-like behavior, where they become resistant to differing viewpoints and exhibit a self-centered approach to relationships. Who is the real gonde? Pushing one's personal style to an extreme can lead anyone, including Korean Gen Zers, to exhibit gonde-like behavior. So the various ways in which Korean Gen Zers interact with each other and perceive themselves differ significantly from previous generations. They place great emphasis on individuality, personal preferences, and the cultivation of specific imagery. It's essential to recognize that this distinctive personality trait doesn't solely arise from Generation Z themselves, but is also shaped by various interactions and societal influences, making it a complex amalgamation rather than an individual choice. Moreover, it's crucial to acknowledge that both within and between generations, people's behaviors and attitudes are not inherently right or wrong, but simply different. Each generation has its own unique values and approaches to life, and these differences shouldn't be viewed as faults, but rather as part of the natural variation in our shared humanity. The paradox is that Generation Z often labels the older generation as gonde, perceiving them as somewhat conservative and resistant to change. Yet in doing so, they themselves can also be susceptible to displaying gonde-like traits. This can even spark conflicts within their own generation, driven by differences in how individuals within Generation Z choose to define and treat themselves. It is essential to recognize that viewing one's own position as absolute truth is a form of violence and a manifestation of true Gondé behavior, regardless of age or social status. Instead of fixating on our differences and engaging in emotionally charged confrontations, the people of Korea should strive for genuine understanding and empathy toward each generation's unique perspectives and actions. By fostering open dialogue and seeking common ground, we can build a more harmonious and unified society where all generations coexist with respect and appreciation for one another.